Alright, we're going to learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube. Before we begin, let's just talk briefly about how the Rubik's Cube works, okay? A Rubik's Cube has three types of pieces. It has corner pieces, edge pieces, and center pieces, okay? The center pieces are always, they're rigid, they're part of the rigid frame. This centerpiece is part of the rigid center of the cube, and they cannot move in relation to each other. White is always opposite yellow, red is always opposite orange, and green is always opposite blue. They cannot move with relationship to each other, okay? So this makes understanding a Rubik's Cube a little bit easier. There is no such thing, for example, as a yellow-white piece, or a piece that has both yellow and white on it, because yellow and white are opposite each other, and they cannot be brought together. They cannot be, like yellow cannot move over here so that it's adjacent to white. That's not possible. Okay? So when we talk about solving a Rubik's Cube, we're going to talk about Rubik's Cubes. When I say the yellow side, I mean the side with the yellow center. The white side is the side with the white center, okay? And we'll talk about holding the cube and orienting the cube in particular ways as we solve it, alright? So, with that in mind, remember, corner pieces, edge pieces, center pieces. Yellow side, white side, okay? Keeping those basic terms in mind, we're going to begin now and learn step one in how to solve a Rubik's Cube. So I'm going to begin by just scrambling the cube up here, and then we're going to begin with step one. Step one is very, very easy. Some people, when they talk about how to solve a Rubik's Cube, they skip to what I consider step two. There's a reason when I'm teaching the beginner method why I use this particular step as step one, and it's because it makes setting up step two extremely easy. And so I think for beginners, this is a very, very good way to do it. People say, I don't want to learn a method with 8 steps, I want to learn a method with only 7 steps. Well, it turns out that adding this step at the beginning makes it much easier. So I really believe this is the best way to go. Okay, step one, using the method I'm going to teach, involves creating what I call a daisy. And that's where you you keep the white center on the bottom, the yellow center is on the top, so this is the yellow center, so this is the yellow side. And we're going to put the 4 white edge pieces around the yellow center. As I mentioned, I believe that this makes it easier to do the next step, which is where you put those white pieces down on the white side. That's going to be described in video number 2. For this video, all we're going to do is talk about putting the white edge pieces on the yellow side. Here, here, see these 4 pieces. We're going to ignore, for now, the corners. You may end up with a white corner piece up here in addition to those 4 pieces. We may not. It just doesn't matter. We're going to ignore the corner pieces for now. We're only going to focus on the edge pieces. So let's take a minute and look at the cube and see where those edge pieces ended up. Here's one. It's already on the upper face, so that's good. Here's one. There's a white edge piece. Here's another one right here. And since I don't see the other one, it must be right there on the bottom. Okay? So all you have to do is find a way to get those pieces to the top. Alright? I'm going to solve some of these and walk you through it, and then we'll talk about some special cases that may arise. Okay, first of all, we've already got one on the top, so there we go. Yay for us. That was easy. Okay, so here's one down here. I would like to get that white piece up to the top. If I just turn the face that it's on 180 degrees, it is on the top layer, but it's poking out the wrong direction. So simply turning that face like that all the way did not work. Okay? So how can I get that piece to the top? Well, I can turn the face that it's on 90 degrees, and now this piece is not only on this layer, but it's also on this layer. And so, by turning it halfway up on that layer, and then turning it the rest of the way up on that layer. Now I have it face up on the top side. Okay? So let's look again. Where's another piece? Here's another piece. Okay? And this piece is in a similar situation. If I turn the face that it's on 180 degrees like that, it's on the top layer, yes it is, but it's pointing out the wrong direction. The sticker's not pointing upward the way I want it to be. Okay? So rather than turning that 180 degrees, what I'm going to do is turn it 90 degrees. I'm going to turn it part way. See, just 90 degrees. Now from here, I can turn it this way, and that will put it on the top layer. Okay, but we've got a problem here. If I turn it up like that and put it on the top layer, it's going to bump this piece out of the way. It's going to take it off the top layer. So what can I do so that I can turn this face up like that without bumping this off the top layer? What I do is this. I rotate the top layer so that one of these empty spaces is here, where I know that that is going to end up. So I rotate the top layer. Now this empty space where there is no white is where this ought to go, and I turn it up like that to occupy that space. And we have one more piece, and where is it? Where's our other white? Here's our white piece, okay? And I want it to go up here too. If I turn it this way, it's the wrong direction. So I know that turning it this way is not a smart move. It's on the top, but it's pointing out the wrong way. I can tell by looking at it that I have to turn it this way to get it onto the top. But again, as I turn it up like that, it bumps this one out of the way. I don't want to do that. That doesn't help at all. That doesn't create any progress in solving the daisy. So what do? I need to move this empty space into the spot here where I know that that is going to end up. So I turn the top layer until that space is where I know that that needs to go. And there we go. I turn it face up. Okay? So this is what I mean by a white daisy. Here we have 4 white pieces around the yellow center. I could have ended up with some white pieces in the corner spots as well. Some white corners could have ended up here, and that would complicate the picture by having white in addition to the 4, but it's irrelevant to the issue. That's perfectly fine if you also end up with some white corners here. But what we want is, we're specifically focusing on the white edges. Okay? So let's do another one. I'm just going to randomly mess this cube up, and we'll look at some more situations that we might come across. Okay? So here's our cube. Here's our yellow center, and there are no white pieces around it. Where are our white pieces? We have one here, we have one there, one here, and one there. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so those are our white pieces. Let's go ahead and begin placing them on the upper layer here. So this is simple. We'll just turn that like that. There's one. Okay, this is pretty easy. Here's one here. I'll just turn it up like that. Okay. And here's this one here. And I'm actually going to leave this one the way it is because I want to demonstrate a point here. I'm going to imagine that the top had been this way, and that in the process of rotating this piece up to here, I don't disturb or move anything. We'll just move it up. Remember, we're ignoring white corners, so it's perfectly fine that we have this corner and that corner. Those don't hurt this at all. That's fine. We're ignoring those. Okay? Doesn't matter. So when we get to this point, this piece, I specifically rotated it here so that I could discuss this now. This piece is on the top layer, but it's sticking out sideways. So I need to get it off the top layer, and I need to bring it back up a different way so that the white sticker is pointing upwards rather than out sideways. So I turn it halfway down like that. I turn it 90 degrees, and now I can turn it up this way, and that will put it on top. But in the course of doing that, it'll bump this one out of the way. I don't want to do that. I don't want to bump that one out of the way. So I have to do what I've described earlier. I need to move the empty space around to here before I move it up. Now when I move it up, it doesn't bump anything out of the way. And here we have our yellow daisy. Ignoring the corner pieces, those don't matter. Okay? So let's review all of the possible situations that you can have when trying to create a white daisy. One situation is that the piece that you're trying to place up top is on the white side. It's on the bottom. Now that's a no-brainer. All you have to do is turn the piece 180 degrees and it goes from pointing straight downward on the white side to pointing straight upward on the yellow side. In doing that, you may have to, let's say that it's here, it's directly underneath a piece that's face up, you may have to move the empty space around so that it's over the top, so that when you turn it face up like that, you don't bump anything else out of the way. But when you have a piece that's on the white side, it's not a complex maneuver to turn that 180 degrees so that it's pointing straight up. Okay? You may have a situation like the one I described just a moment ago, where you have a piece that's on the top layer like this, but it's sticking out sideways. Okay? For that, we're going to rotate this face down this way, then we're going to rotate this face up that way. That'll take this cube off the top layer and into the middle, and then from the middle back up to the top over here, and that will rotate it so that it's face up. But you may, in the course of doing that, also have to rotate the top layer. I'll show you what I mean. This is the case we just did a moment ago. You rotate it a half turn down like that, and now you'd like to rotate it a half turn up to put it up face up. But in the course of doing that, I'm going to bump this one out of the way. So in order to not bump that one out of the way, I'm going to take the space where this just was, right here, and I'm going to rotate it so that as I bring this piece up, it moves into this empty space rather than bumping one of the other white pieces out of the way. Okay? One scenario you may have, it's a very simple case, is where the white edge piece simply needs to be lifted up like that. It may be, if it's in the middle layer already here, now you just have to raise it. It's simple. It's a half turn. Sometimes, though, you want to raise it up and the space where it will go is already occupied. So in that case, you just turn the top layer like that and move it into the empty space. Okay? And then one final situation you may find is where the piece you want to move to the top layer is on the bottom, but instead of the sticker facing straight down, so you can just turn it 180 degrees, it's sticking out sideways like this. See how it's sticking out on the side of the cube? And if you rotate it 180 degrees, while yes, it's on the top layer, the sticker's still pointing out sideways. It's not pointing upwards. And so it's improperly oriented here. So if that's the case, it's on the bottom here. You turn it a half a turn. Or you could turn it a half a turn this way. It doesn't matter, either one. We're going to do it this way this time. You turn it a half a turn. And now, by turning it this way, you'll put it onto the top layer. Sometimes, though, in doing that, you'll bump a piece out of the way that's white and it's already on the top layer, and you want that there. So before you turn that face up, you'll rotate the top layer, placing the empty space where that needs to go, so that when you move it up, you don't bump any of your other white edge pieces out of the way. Those are all the possible scenarios you might come across when making the white daisy. Okay? So let's mess it up and just do it one more time. And that's step one. That's really, really easy. You should be able to intuitively figure out how to do the white daisy by yourself without any explanation. But with that explanation, that's about as thorough as you can get. So here we have our cube. We have the yellow. We have white on bottom, yellow on top. Let's locate our pieces. Here's an edge piece, and here's one, and there's one. So those are all four of our white edge pieces. Let's begin placing them now. Okay? I'm going to turn this one face up like that. I'm going to turn that one face up like that. I'll turn, let's see, where's my, I moved some of them, I moved some of these around in the course of doing that. To move this one to the top would bump that out of the way. So before I move the bottom one to the top, I moved an empty spot into that slot, so that when I move it up like that, it moves into an empty slot. I've got one more, here it is. I know that if I rotate it 180 degrees, it's going to be still sticking out sideways. So instead I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, and then I'll rotate it this way. Now that would bump this one out of its way, so I'm going to turn the top layer, moving an empty spot into the path of this, so that as I move that upward like that, it doesn't bump any of these other white ones out of the way, and there's my daisy. Okay? So that's step one. Very simple, and what this does is it sets us up so that when we move the white pieces to the white side, you're guaranteed, slam dunk, you'll get it right every single